What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we got our very first episode of Marvel What If, and I gotta say, I loved it. Oh my God, I absolutely loved it. And if this is an indication of what the series is going to be like going forward, I'm only more excited. It happened really fast, but here's the funny thing. The series felt exactly like a What If comic. That's how the What If comics play out, right? They happen like that. They take place so quickly. Like, it opens up exactly the way a What If comic would, which is, here's how things played out as you know them, but what if they happened differently, right? Just one choice, one decision, one different thing changes everything. I love the idea that like Steve Rogers was shot and injured. I love the idea that Abraham Erskine still died. And I love that Peggy Carter went on to become like the new Captain America. When she took the super soldier serum, everything got bigger. Everything got bigger. So here's the idea here. In terms of Wanda having these abilities, my stance, at least my new stance anyway, is she's always had these powers, right? Wanda has always had these abilities. She's always had the power to alter reality. That's not anything new. It's just she never realized it. She's only ever really been able to use the ability for like telekinesis. So my argument is Wanda's always had those powers. Question answered. Now the question becomes, if she's always had those powers, what happened over the course of the last 3 weeks that she was suddenly able to use those? Because remember, WandaVision picks up 3 weeks after the end of Avengers Endgame. And so we can largely assume that the events of WandaVision began somewhere between 1 to 2 weeks after the events of Avengers Endgame. So my thought is this, that Wanda ended up going to Doctor Strange, or Doctor Strange sought her out. But it's most likely she went to Stephen Strange and was basically looking for ways to learn her abilities, right? Learning what she's capable of. Or maybe Stephen Strange went to her and said, hey, like you have these crazy abilities, you can do a lot more than you think you can, but I personally don't have time to train you. So I can refer you to a colleague. I don't really know if I set a whole lot of stock in that, right? I mean, Baron Mordo seems like the kind of guy who would like go to a coffee shop and like they're out of his favorite coffee and he's like, this desecration of my morning routine will not go unpunished. Like, he seems like that kind of guy, right? Just blow things out of proportion. I don't know if he's like struggling with depression, so he's catastrophizing everything, but whatever the case is, there probably is significance in this insofar as because of the actions of Doctor Strange, reality is breaking down. Now, a little bit of a spoiler here for Spider-Man No Way Home. We know the way that the spell was supposed to go is that anybody who knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man is going to forget, right? They're not going to know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. But because Peter wouldn't shut the hell up, the spell ended up getting screwed up. So basically, everybody who knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man was yanked into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. X-Men the Animated Series is coming back. Yes! I'm sorry, I'm so excited, people. Oh my God. X-Men the Animated Series is making a return. By the way, this is me recording in the new studio. Let me know how it sounds. If it sounds better, if it sounds worse, let me know. I'm very, very curious. Got sound blankets behind me, in front of me. I got a green screen behind me, but sound blankets in front of me. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, here's the thing, man. The reason why I'm so excited about this, right? For those of you guys who don't know, the reason why I'm so excited about this, my fans know this, X-Men the Animated Series is how it all started for me, man. That's what got me into comic books, was X-Men the Animated Series. It's what started everything for me, right? Like, had I never seen that show as a kid, I would not be the comic book fan that I am right now, right? It's because of X-Men the Animated Series that I love comic books. Now, for those of you guys who don't know how the Matrix started, and I don't know anybody who doesn't know, but for those of you guys who don't know, the beginnings of the Matrix and how it all came to existence is really cool. It's teased a little bit in the first movie when Morpheus is talking to Neo, but the full-on explanation of how it all came about is actually covered in the Animatrix in a 2-part series called The Second Renaissance. And so the way this played out is at the beginning of the 21st century, humanity developed what we really call true artificial intelligence, which is to say, a thinking, feeling, singularity among computers. Now, what this did is it led to machines basically developing more machines. But because humans were essentially the ones behind the button, right, able to shut it down, or whatever the case was, machines were, by all standards of measurement, subservient to humanity. This basically led to humanity becoming complacent, lazy, and ultimately arrogant. And so what ended up happening is that one of these machines, named B166ER, was actually going to be eliminated, destroyed, put down, what have you, by its owner due to the fact that it was quote unquote malfunctioning. I loved that like the Mandarin was not your stereotypical villain, right? He wasn't like Obadiah Stane or like the guy that created Taskmaster, I can't remember his name because he was forgettable. Like it wasn't like any of those guys, right? The Mandarin was in a lot of ways humanized. I thought he was just gonna be like, I'm the Mandarin, blarg, I'm bent on world domination and I've tricked you, Shang-Chi. Roll credits. Like, I thought that was gonna be the overall film, but it wasn't. The Mandarin was complex and he was great and it was amazing. You know, I loved that. Honestly, and this is the craziest thing, to say. As much as I love Shang-Chi, he didn't really feel like the star of his own movie. I mean, obviously he was. There's really no way to contest that. The way the film unfolded, he was. What I mean by that when I say I don't feel like he was a star of his own film is everybody else was awesome in that movie. They all had something to offer. They all brought something unique, whether it was a feel or it was a character's plot progression, whatever the case happened to be. The only person that we didn't really get a whole lot of feel for was a guy in the mask who trained Shang-Chi, right? I don't remember his name. He's got a name in the comics. I don't know. Honestly, he was a throwaway character you only saw for about 10 issues, so I can't really remember his name. But nonetheless, basically, if the spell hasn't been cast by Doctor Strange yet, then how could it be that Eddie was yanked into the MCU? The answer to that question, ladies and gentlemen, pow! Loki. Okay, one of the theories that we had when it came to this whole thing, the multiverse coming back in the Loki TV show, right? One of the things that we pointed out is that universes were crossing over with each other, right? You guys remember, we talked about that. We showed what it looked like when the multiverse was coming back and you had universes growing and then you had universes passing through them, so on and so forth. One of the things that we had talked about in Spider-Man 3 and possibly could have been the spell of Doctor Strange or possibly even something else. Maybe it's not that the spell went awry, maybe it's because of the events of Loki, is that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is just passing through other realities, right? It's the explanation we gave for how it is that you see Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus, then you see like Jamie Foxx's Electro from some alternate reality, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, because they're passing through universes and along the way they're meeting these various people. Now again, whether that's actually true or not, I don't know, but this really seems to lend credence to it, right? Something that I want to get out of the way right now. The guy they were talking to, right? The guy that Jonathan Majors played in the show, that Sylvie and Loki were talking to, that was not Kang the Conqueror. Well, it was, but it wasn't. Let's talk about a guy called Immortus. So in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with regards to this explanation of this guy being a scientist from the 31st century, much of that is pretty much the exact same, except Kang the Conqueror originates from the 30th century in Marvel Comics. I don't really know why they chose 31st instead of 30th, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter all that much. Much like what you saw, the guy was just kind of living in his timeline, but Kang ultimately got bored with his life and discovered the ability to time travel. And so what he did in the comics is he traveled into the past to ancient Egypt and gave himself the name of Rama-Tut. Now during this time, he faced off against characters like Apocalypse and he faced off against Doctor Strange, but most notably, he faced off against the Fantastic Four. And what the Fantastic Four ended up doing was in defeating him, basically forcing him back to his timeline. He was supposed to go back to the 30th century and then basically chalk up his attempts to go into the past as essentially a failure. Cast aside the name of Rama-Tut, go back to being Kang the Conqueror, that was supposed to be it. I've been dying to talk about this for days. Okay, look, here's the thing, man. Here is the thing. Man, y'all ain't ready, man. Okay, no spoilers. No spoilers. Man, dude, okay, here's the thing, man. This movie, like, I know I should record it at the office, right? Check it out. Here's kind of what my home looks like for those of you guys who aren't really familiar with my place. This is a little bit of a setup tour, going on. Man, y'all aren't ready. Y'all aren't ready, son. This movie's on a whole nother level, son. It is, whoo, damn. Okay, okay, no spoilers. Here's one thing I'll give you guys. With the exception of the great big huge fight sequence and Electro, pretty much everything you've seen in the trailer happens in the first 30 minutes. Let that sink in. Man, this movie, man, let me tell you, man, dude, it's, I'm telling you guys right now, man, like, I think this movie's better than Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Man, I wish I could spoil stuff. Okay, we'll do like the spoiler review later, right? We'll do that at like the end of the week, right? For right now, this is an answer to the question: should you be hyped about Spider-Man No Way Home? Son, man, it is. If God was making Spider-Man movies right now, this is what it would look like right now. It's nuts. It's amazing. It's the pacing, the storytelling. Man, the care. It's man, it is the fight sequences are mind-blowing, right? It's crazy. It's absolutely mind-blowing. It's all the rumors out there, like all the things out there, people were saying that this feels like Spider-Man Endgame. They were not wrong. They're 100% right. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and let's talk about this Eternals movie. Would I have given this movie a 59% on Rotten Tomatoes? No. Do I understand why some people did? Yes. Okay, so as always when it comes to these things, right, one thing that I want to make clear, the dislikes that I had for this movie weren't really tied to the comics. And there's a reason for that, right? So one of the things we talked about here, right, like the Eternals first appeared in the 70s, ever since the Eternals showed up in Marvel Comics, the biggest struggle Marvel has had is getting people to care about the Eternals. Because by and large, they just seem unnecessary, right? The role of the Eternals in Marvel Comics is to safeguard humanity from the deviants and whatever threats may befall the Earth from beyond the stars, right? You know, extraterrestrials, different things like that. But as time has progressed and as humanity has grown more powerful in the comics, now you got stuff like the X-Men and X-Factor and X-Force and Alpha Flight and Omega Flight and Big Hero 6 and the Avengers and the New Avengers and the Mighty Avengers and West Coast Avengers and all kinds of stuff, right? You got all kinds of teams that exist out there. And that's to say nothing of ultra powerful beings like Hyperion and the Sentry or Franklin Richards or the Molecule Man Owen Reese. And just those four guys, their powers dwarf the powers of the Eternals themselves. So by and large, there isn't a need for the Eternals to safeguard humanity from anything because humanity can protect itself. And so ever since then, no one's really cared about the Eternals because no one's wrote a compelling story to give people a reason to care about the Eternals. So I didn't really go into this film expecting this to basically pick up and to correct all the mistakes that the comics had made. Having said that, the movie had pluses and it had minuses, just like any movie. So let's start with the things that I loved about this. So overall, just in terms of how the movie looked, not really focusing on the character development or anything like that, but just the visual look of the film, it was gorgeous, right? The soundtrack was fantastic. The special effects were mind-blowing, right? Absolutely loved it. It was a visually stunning film. One of the things that I loved the most about this, and I was a little uncertain about how it would unfold, the Celestials, right? The Celestials were enormous. They were every bit as imposing as you would expect them to be, right? Okay, so let's say I'm Erisham the Judge, right? Just to give you guys perspective, let's say I'm Erisham the Judge and I'm holding my hand out, right? The Eternals were like that tall in my hand.